Welcome to the Foolproof FSBO podcast. I'm Tim the FSBO guy, and this is the show that helps homeowners sell their homes without paying that $31,000 agent tax. Hey, every week I'm going to share real strategies, simple tools, and proven checklists that make selling your home yourself safe, fast, and profitable. So if you're ready to keep your equity and stay in control of your sale, you're in the right place. Let's go ahead and dive in. All right, look at that. We are live. And with that, I'm bringing Jack on. Hey, everybody, what's going on? Tim Street here on the Foolproof FSBO weekly live stream. Happy to have a great guy with us today. I was lucky enough to appear on his show, and he was gracious enough to come on ours. And can't tell you how genuinely excited I am to have him here. This is Jack Haas, and he's the founder of Real Deal Crew, and he provides what he calls fractional operations for real estate professionals. We're going to get into that. He's got two podcasts. As if you can't imagine somebody not being busy enough with just one. He actually runs Real Deal Cast and Real Deal Chat, which is impressive because I don't know how he can pull that much time out of his day. I struggle with just doing this. So this guy's pretty cool. After talking to him, I learned he sort of lives at the intersection of AI, real estate, operations in a way that I found to be incredibly valuable. And so I think everybody's watching here is going to enjoy this. So with Jack, hey buddy, welcome to the show and thanks for being here.
Well, thanks, Tim. This is great. I really enjoyed our conversation on my show, and that should be going live here any day.
Awesome. I love that. Yeah. And dude, it's funny too. I didn't know you had two shows. That's incredible. That's how do you have the time for that?
Well, what's funny is that you say taking time out of my day. The Real Deal Cast is a bit more of a nerdy channel. Like if you're looking to get into operations and implement some of these tools, all I'm really doing there is recording myself doing some of this stuff. So while I'm working, I go, oh, maybe I should turn on the camera and record myself as I'm. So that's what
that was. Yeah, that was his method. He was like, his whole thing was just do shit and record it, do shit and document it. And that was like, I remember like back in the early, before COVID came, that's all he kept screaming about. I'm like, who is this Gary V knucklehead? And why is and then next thing you know, the guy blows up like it's crazy. It's awesome.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I've been watching Gary V since he was doing his wine show. So this shows my age.
Oh, dude, let's not talk about age here. And I thought it was going to be really cool to have you on because, whether people watching the show are maybe real estate investors who are trying to figure out how to scale, or even, people that are coming to hear me talk about how to sell your own home, regardless, they're running an operation. And I think a lot of people who find themselves in hot water, it's because they come into this without operations, without systems, without automations, basically no plan for the stuff that actually eats up their time. And I kind of think that's where you found your sweet spot in life, right? Is kind of teaching people how to do that, if I'm correct.
Yeah, not only doing that, but doing it for them in some ways. The FSBO thing is kind of an interesting one because I think a lot of people, there's a lot of things that I see as projects, if you will. And a lot of people don't see them as that. They just think it's going to be easy peasy and they're just going to kind of do it they figure it out as they go, build that plane in the air, if you will. I kind of like departmentalize a little bit and try to like, okay, what's the path to success here? What's the end goal and how do I get there? And in doing so, I have a tendency of kind of putting steps in place and making sure that I have some bases covered.
Yeah, that's smart. I think you and I kind of are very similar on that. I think a lot of, and this must be like, I know in the Marines, I learned this was the most complex things, the most complex initiatives can be broken down into a series of steps. And, running a marathon is simple, but it's not easy. It's simple in the sense of it's putting one foot in front of the other for 26.2 miles at a time. It's nothing. There's nothing easy about it, right? And I kind of that's what I really enjoyed about when we had our conversations. I think you and I were kind of preaching to that same choir. Like, look, Yeah, things are complex. Things can be scary, but if the way you eat an elephant is one bite at a time. If you're able to scale this down into small incremental steps, even massively complex things that people get paid a lot of money for can be handled on your own in house if you understand the blueprint and the process to break it down. Um,
Mhm.
so one of the things that I would love for you to share with the audience here, what does it mean when you say you provide fractional operations for real estate pros? Because I after talking to you, I kind of get that, but if I was just coming off the street, I probably wouldn't have understood that. And I did use that phraseology when I introduced you, so would love to hear
Sure.
your take on that.
Well, I'm not the fit for everybody. I'm pretty transparent on that. What I do though is those individuals that are doing consistent deals on a regular basis, maybe they're doing a deal a week or a couple deals a week, and they're at that point where they're considering maybe even hiring somebody to help out, or but they know that in order for them to scale or to go to that next level, they need some of these things in place. Whether it's, I can't even tell you how many SOPs I've written at this point,
Yeah,
getting some standard operating procedures and documentation in place, to actually implementing processes and automations and integrate maybe AI in some of these things. Um, they're ready to take their business to the next level, and they just don't have the bandwidth in order to get that done, or maybe they don't even know what direction to take. And I'm just, we can go down a number of rabbit holes, but I'm running into time and time again where, as well as I, when somebody contacts you, you have 5 minutes, if that, in order to, that speed to lead is probably the most important thing a person can implement. And many people just frankly don't know where to even start.
yeah. Who's primarily coming to you with saying, "Hey, Jack, I need a lot of help here." Who is it that you find yourself primarily serving?
Well, a lot of real estate investors that are typically buying distressed homes,
Mm,
or fix and flippers that are buying distressed homes, and they're working with those individuals on a regular basis. I've actually found another audience too. I've been helping quite a few realtors with similar situations, because they know for a fact that if somebody is calling to sell their house, they have a fraction of a minute in order to make sure there has to be a response to prevent that person calling the next realtor, calling the next investor. You have to get them at least to think, oh, somebody's working on this. I can stop, go on with my day. You
that's
want them to
actually
stop.
awesome.
You have
Yeah,
to
I,
stop,
I
get
didn't
him
mean to
to
step on
stop.
you. I apologize. That is so important. I want people to actually listen to what you just said, because I know when I was an active real estate agent, that was 90% of the battle right there, was just getting them to just pause, listen to me. And if you don't have a great hook, and a hook, I don't mean verbal. I don't mean you're shiny and you're fast on your feet. I mean a hook saying, listen, I'm different, and different is valuable in this industry, and here's why. And so I'm sorry. I just want to put a fine point on what you just said, because that is such valuable advice, especially for a lot of agents out there who listen. I want them to hear that is so cool. So, Jack, if you can please continue down that path, I'd love to know. What is it that you tell people? Like, what is that pin that you put in the corkboard that gets people to just, all right, hit the brakes? I found my guy I want to work with. What does that look like typically?
Well, I typically, I can break it down as exactly what I implement in these situations. But in the end, what we have to remember, especially realtors, we have to remember you're not available 24/7. You're just not.
Right.
You can't answer every single phone call. But if you implement a few things, you can at least be perceived that you do. So a great way is that I implement something that will, as soon as the person calls in, if you're not available to answer the phone, we do a text back like within seconds, just saying, hey, notice I missed your phone call. What can I help you with? Within a few more minutes, if you still haven't returned the call, we drop a voicemail onto their phone. So it looks like and it would be
Yeah.
your voice. You record this call, this thing. We drop a voicemail, and then we do a series of updates. I call it no deal left behind. We go through a series of follow up. If you're not continue to not be available, we're trying to get them to return your call. Not only does that mean that they're engaged, but that's another sell point that they've likely stopped the process of moving on to somebody else, and now they've kind of focused on you. Like you're the one that at least has gotten their attention.
You're speaking my language, and I'm going to have to ask you to forgive me because I didn't realize you went this deep into the relationship management side of everything. This is just so doggone cool, and I could absolutely see why real estate agents would absolutely love this kind of a setup because, again, you know what's the biggest complaint that you hear about real estate agents? It's that they're not accessible. They don't call you. I called that sign 15 times. No one ever got back with me. I mean, we as and I take blame on this. We have a very big reputation problem in this industry, and a lot of it is deserved. I always did my best to get back with people, but I'm sure, I guarantee you, there's times where I dropped a ball. God forbid, I was at my child's birthday party or on a flight to Des Moines for a wedding in Iowa or something. It doesn't matter why. There are absolutely times that in having that automated callback scenario is just so good. I was actually looking at for some, all of my business when I was a real estate agent, it was almost all either referrals from other people or outbound dialing. I called all the expireds. I called all the cancels. That was me. I worked the phones a lot. And it was hell. I was really good at it, but I hated it. I did not enjoy that. But one of the things I thought about experimenting with was the voicemail drops. And what was cool about those is, and you probably already know this, but some of them I've gotten so good that you can put smart fields in the voicemail drops. So if I have intelligence on who's calling me or how I'm calling back, it's not just, hey, I just missed your call. It's, hey, Jack, sorry I missed your call. Now it's like, wow. It's, hey, Jack, saw your home on 123 Main. Would love to help you. Wow, that's really cool. So yeah, very, very smart. So
I use something. Well, I hate to interrupt you there, but I even use something similar for property management because I can, the rent line is used for typically two things. One is for call for a maintenance request or what have you, and others are looking for apartment, for example. So depending on the audience, the AI and the system treats those audiences differently. And you can do that in a number of ways regarding distressed homeowners or what have you. But for example, in the property management space, if the phone number comes in, it's unrecognized, it responds saying, sorry, Mr. Call, how can I help? But this goes down that AI rabbit hole where we can train the AI and put up the necessary guardrails to answer what you would like it to answer. So for example, in this scenario where somebody is calling in looking for an apartment, I have a spreadsheet set up. It already knows, the AI knows what units are available and the property details and everything. So it actually can answer basic rental questions without my involvement.
That's amazing. It's so funny. I don't know if you've noticed this, but I know I'm old enough to remember. What would have been 2006, 2007. One of my really good friends, we started a company together called Crucial Contact. And this guy was so smart. And the guys we had on our team, Matt Simmons, Jared Barris, and Matt Barris. And these guys were so brilliant because they were ahead of their time with how IVR worked. And IVR back then was just saying, I want to look at 123 Main, and it would spit back out all this information about 123 Main. And they were so cutting edge doing that. And eventually that whole scenario evolved into you calling Amex to report a stolen credit card, and you're sitting there screaming into your phone, representative, human, put me in. And it's so annoying. And it's funny because I think we're going to kind of see this like bell curve over time, where in the beginning, it was cool to get an automated voice respondent. And then in the middle there, I hated it. I wanted to talk to a freaking human. pretty soon, I believe we're going to hit a point where I will take an AI over a human any day. And I think we're getting there. And I think it's just such a wild time to be alive where, very soon, and I think within the horizon of our site here, the next few years, we're going to opt for, instead of a call center attendant from a foreign country that I frankly can't understand, who also frankly doesn't give a damn about me or my problems, and their whole incentive is just to get me off the freaking phone. If I could actually talk to sort of an omniscient AI, maybe omniscient isn't a good word, but an AI who knows everything there is to know about that system, everything there is to know about their warranty, all their goodwill programs, man, I'd much rather talk to that thing.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, you're absolutely right. We're seeing advancements like we've never seen before. I mean, you mentioned Real Deal Cast. Part of that channel is when a new model hits the market, I kind of go through the announcement, try to analyze and try to break down what does this mean for real estate people? Like how will this change impact us, or how will it make things better? And I know that kind of gets a little nerdy sometimes too, but it almost becomes a full-time job just staying on top of some of this information.
Yeah. Again, I'm sitting there talking about aging myself and feeling old, but I was also old enough to remember before we had the internet. We didn't have the internet,
Right.
and living through that transition and looking with the benefit of hindsight, right? Everything becomes so clear in retrospect, and there were people who they doggedly refused to accept the reality of the internet. They stubbornly dug their heels in and they said, whatever, people are still going to want a look in the eye and a handshake. I'll be damned if, we'll be able to cement deals, with a webcam. Well, are you nuts? That's how almost all deals. Sure. Is there value to interpersonal, in-person communication? Absolutely. 100%. But I think people are trying to let the perfect be the enemy of the good. And by saying, oh yeah, we'll accept nothing less than, a 14-hour flight to Tokyo and economy, and then shaking hands and looking people in the eyes and bowing and having sake, that's not really necessary anymore. And so what you ended up with was almost two different classes of understanding or realities, where on the one hand, you had people who were saying, listen, I'm not going to lose my job to this whole internet thing. But then the other people who said, look, I'm not looking to take your job, but I'm telling you, the folks who understand how to use this new tool are going to take the jobs. And I look at AI the very same way, or at least similar. I think it's a much larger, like by several orders of magnitude change from just delivery of connectivity, which is what the internet was, to now intelligent connectivity with that intelligent scaling every single day. And I think that we're going to end up in a spot where you have, again, two people who acknowledge reality, like, listen, AI is not going to take your job tomorrow. It might not take your job the next day, but eventually either somebody who can wield those tools effectively or the AI itself absolutely will. You look at the milkman, the Avon man, travel agents, like all these friction points in the economy that went by the wayside once technology took down those barriers. And I think this is just another example of that.
Yeah, you're kind of feeding right into some of the things I've been saying. One of the big things that I'm really trying to be clear on is that right now AI, for example, is being used and crammed into anything and everything. Every problem is a nail, and AI is that hammer, and we're just gonna cram it into any and every solution. The situation though is that when you come to a provider like me, we're helping you build your Iron Man suit. I kind of just describe it as that. We still need you. You are in the heart of this process.
Yeah.
And all I can do is relieve some of the pressure in making things systematic and processes. Where you're going to shine is that human interaction, and where you're going to stand out right now is that human aspect to that sales relationship. So that's going to be your magic sauce. That's going to be actually what's going to make you stand out. We've all seen the AI slop that is being pushed out onto social media right now. Whether it's the trend of people making themselves into action figures, you probably saw that trend for
Yeah.
a while. To
Yeah.
we're just seeing this over and over and over again, and you can actually see the social networks getting used to seeing that AI slop, and it just doesn't gain the traction as something that is genuinely created. So it is one of those situations. It will amplify anything in your life. And that means we can make your process better, but it's garbage in, garbage out. If you're bad at a situation, it's also going to amplify the bad.
Yeah.
There's a number of things there.
Yeah, I do love the kind of AI wars that we're in right now, where everybody's always trying to one up the other one. Grok will come out with something, then Anthropic will come out, then ChatGPT will come out, or OpenAI, as it were. And it's funny too when you talk about the human in the Iron Man suit, because I didn't realize until I started using Claude. I didn't realize how important personality played in terms of enjoyment of utilization of an AI. Like, when I look at Grok, I kind of look at it as a tabloid. If I want to know any current events, I usually go to Grok because it's feeding in all the X data. If I want just a really cool calculator, I usually use ChatGPT. I've never used Gemini all that much, except in the Chrome search bar when it defaults to an AI search, but I've never sought it out. I've heard nice things. But I can tell you for day to day, Opus 4.6 is just amazing. Like I have probably consumed more tokens on Opus 4.6 in the last month than I have on ChatGPT in 6 months. Because the nature of the conversations change, and it does such a better job of I don't want to say emoting, because I don't value fake sympathy, but I do value the appearance of empathy, where it can say, hey, I can understand why you're feeling this way, and here's what I would do to address these three issues. And it could be issues about supplements I'm taking. It could be issues about workout regimens I'm doing. It could be issues about dealing with tenants and guests, things like that. It's amazing how important gosh, I don't really know how to explain what I say, other than to say it almost feels like you're talking to a person instead of a robot. And I'm amazed that, even though I know there's a robot on the end, how much that has turned out to matter to me just by looking at my screen time and seeing what apps are getting my attention. That one is far and above away, and I don't think it's necessarily any smarter. I don't think it's any better. They're all large language models trained on roughly similar data sets. So yeah, I thought that was interesting. I was talking about how much more I enjoyed Claude than I enjoyed the other AIs. That was wild. So we're going to wait for Jack to come rejoin us. I'll go ahead and text him right now. Sorry, folks, just give me a couple of seconds here. That was crazy. All right, cool. Sorry about that, folks. Yeah, that was weird. So Jack's going to be coming back on. Note to self: do not trash talk ChatGPT, OpenAI, whatever. I guess this is YouTube, so maybe the YouTube or Meta gods got mad at me for talking about their AIs in not so glowing language. Anyway, that was weird. So yeah, let's get Jack back in here. All right, let's see here. There we go. Yeah, that was weird. I,
Yeah, I don't
I
know what happened there.
I know what happened. I was sitting there trash talking Gemini, and I'm on Chrome right now, and it hurt. I'm sorry. All right, you're just as good as Claude. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was weird.
I'm gonna recommend something to you. Try helium sometime.
I think I will. I think I'm going to have to cut the thread here because that was really odd. So I was just getting to the question of I want to know what got you here. Because what I know about you, you came from corporate and tech background, you got into real estate investing, and then you basically brought this whole operational brain back to serve the industry. So that's what I was able to glean from the public side of you, Jack, and talking to you.
Sure.
But I'd love to hear the actual story from your lips.
Well, it's one of those things. Like you're right. I worked for Microsoft for a number of different roles for almost a decade, and then one thing leads to another, and me and my business partner we jumped into the real estate investing game and did that full time. COVID struck. Forced me to kind of find a way to a remote day job again. And in doing so, I had to start planning accordingly. I wasn't available 24/7 like I used to when we were doing this full time. So I had to find ways and implement some strategies to ensure things were still getting done. So that's where a lot of these processes and procedures come from, is just real world experience and me solving my own problem. And I have to give it credit. You mentioned I've had a number of episodes with Real Deal Chat. I actually had a couple guys from that show, that are just become good friends over time, and they just say, "Hey, Jack, why aren't you providing this as a service to other people?" And so I kind of took their advice and jumped in full bore and just like provide this as resources to others.
That's amazing. I mean, you're kind of in an industry now that runs like a lot on sticky notes and gut feelings. So for you to bring that whole operational side into things where it runs no matter what. I mean, if I'm understanding correctly, no matter how busy the real estate agent is or the investor, no matter how busy the person is, that end user is still going to get a response to that inquiry.
Yeah, well, there's a couple things. Yeah, you want your business to continue to operate, right? You want some traction going on even when you're not available. But another thing, we're roughly the same age, I would imagine, Tim. We get to the point where like we're running 12 plus hours a day in some situations, and you start to wonder, like, is there a better way? We've been chasing this whole concept of passive income for so long. We need to stop for a second and reposition this hustle into an actual business.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so and you said before, like, you're not everybody's cup of tea. You can't be a perfect fit for everybody. Is that what tends to happen? Do people come to you looking for a hustle and they walk away from you saying, "Oh boy, this is actual work," or what kind of reality are you hitting them with?
Well, that is typically the situation.
Yeah.
You're dealing with one man bands that they got into this real estate investing game thinking, and they've bought into the concept that it's a get rich quick mailbox money. You probably even remember the late night programs that were promising mailbox money, and everything is done passively.
Yeah.
Frankly, it's just not true. And there is a lot of effort that goes on Unfortunately, most investors and realtors fall into the bucket of they're extremely busy. There's no doubt they're extremely busy. I would just question, what are you busy with? Are you
Mhm.
busy with designing your website on a Squarespace template? Are you busy designing your business card? Are you busy answering texts? Like, what are you busy with? Like, a lot of these things, you gotta start treating your and looking at your time as $100 an hour, if not more time. And you gotta stop doing these $15 an hour tasks. That's just consuming cycles. And not only consuming your business cycles, consuming your mental and family cycles. This is like so important that you you've heard the phrase all the time, you have to be working on your business instead of in your business. If you really want to scale, that is absolutely true. You got to either find somebody like me that can help you implement some of these solutions and but in the end, you're the bottleneck.
Yeah. And it's funny too, because this comes from one of the best coaching programs I was ever involved in. It was called Reverse Selling by a guy named Brandon Mulrennan, and he teaches. That's where I learned all my. Well, I shouldn't say all my, because I'd done cold calling previous to this in my sales career with tech, but he really helped me put a fine point on it and understand the consumer behavior behind how it is that you open up a conversation with a complete stranger on the phone. And that was one of the things that would drive him insane, is when he'd find out that his students are spending 3 hours designing a business card that's going to look like shit anyway. I mean, look, if you were any good at graphic design, you wouldn't be in real estate. You'd be doing graphic design. And
Right.
yeah. And so, like, what do you have to show for it? And I'm so guilty of that. Um, it's that shiny object syndrome that I know I'm susceptible to, where, man, I just hate making calls so bad. I know I have to do it, but I could really, this website could use some tweaking. And I'd find myself getting sucked into that trap. The difference is at least I knew it and I was able to kind of fight back against it after being exposed to that. But yeah, and especially, like, again, getting back to the AI stuff. I mean, AI is capable of writing very, very beautiful stuff now, very beautiful content, whether it's websites, Canva, flyers, business cards, all that crap. You literally just hand it off and say, hey, give me 10 iterations of this. And I bet you one or two, or maybe even 9 out of 10 times, it's going to come up with something better than you could.
Yeah. Yeah. And we could go down a number of rabbit holes, and you and I agree with you regarding where some of these AIs they excel in certain ways, but we might disagree on a couple things. But you're at one of the things that I've been using is you mentioned, I call it the sycophants associated with ChatGPT. In fact, it's gotten so bad that I even told it to stop.
Yes.
Just stop.
Yeah.
I don't need to be told one more time that I have a great idea.
That's awesome. Yeah.
I need you to push back on me, some of this stuff. So it's and before we're done here today, I'd like to probably give a couple strategic prompts to people that you might find really beneficial in your business.
Oh my God, by all means, fire away. Let's do it now in case Skynet decides to shut us down again. I would love to hear that. That'd be awesome.
Well, okay. So one thing you were kind of ranting about Gemini.
Yeah.
Gemini is really good in two things that I'm going to point out. One is that we got to remember Google owns YouTube. Mm-hmm. So and Google Maps, right? And so the Google business profile is probably, you have to have one. If you need help with any of those services, Gemini excels.
Yeah.
So whether it's any kind of visual elements, Nano Banana is almost unparalleled at this point. But if you need YouTube ideas, in content suggestions, that's a great place to go for that. But weirdly enough, If you need to help with building out your Google business profile, Gemini also excels there. And in fact, this is kind of a rumor, but if you use another AI in order to build out your Google business profile, Google doesn't seem to like that.
No way. Wow.
Yeah, so you might want to leverage, even if you take the information from ChatGPT or Claude and paste it into Gemini and have it rework it, you might see better performance there.
That's really cool. I never, and as much as I do YouTube, I never actually thought of using Gemini for YouTube. That's actually genius. I use it for Nano Banana. Nano Banana is amazing.
Yeah. And it makes a lot of sense because YouTube is part of Google. So why wouldn't it be trained on that information? The other thing is that I'm going to call people out on this because I don't think people quite understand. In Gemini, in ChatGPT, we're going to focus on ChatGPT. We are getting used to the fact that it has a memory of you.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, it's got kind of a goldfish memory of you. It's only going to remember like within we talked about tokens. And if you do a search here today, and I actually did one before we started here, ChatGPT's memory can handle up to 32,768 tokens. That is roughly 24,000 words. So it remembers the last 24,000 words you've given it.
Yeah.
Okay, that's actually not as much as you think. What I do, and I've gotten in the habit of, is that we just started this conversation off with projects. If you start a project in ChatGPT and you give it some files for it to reference, when you're chatting, you start a new thread, you're chatting, you're working through a process. At the end of that, I want people to start telling it something like, hey, lock in this information that we just discussed in this thread. Please draft a clear and complete summary of what we just worked through so that I can provide it to coworkers and add it to these project files so that it will become that living document will be included. So we're kind of summarizing what we just worked on, kind of finalizing and formalizing what we just did. And then we add it to the project so that you now build in a recurring memory in that project.
Super cool.
Does that make sense, Tim?
It makes all the sense in the world. I love using projects. I didn't realize how valuable they were. In the beginning, I was making custom GPTs, but those are limited by, the prompt length is rather small. I think it's 8,000 characters. And so I would bump my head up against that. And then getting into projects made sense. I actually, and what I'm going to do, I'm actually going to revisit this now that you told me about this. I'm very curious to see what the end of the work product is. My typical work product for like when I'm generating YouTube scripts is I will draw a composite from, like, if I want to do a script on best habits of selling, successful sales, I know what I know. And, I have a pretty good volume of data around that. But what I also know is I'm not nearly the smartest guy in the universe, nor the room. So what I like to do is find out, what are other people saying? What are some things that I might have missed? And I will get a giant composite of everything that's been said on this topic. And I will feed it into an AI. And I'll say, hey, you know what? Based on all the comments, based on all the questions, what would be just an absolute banger of a video script that I could put out? And then once it gives me the outline, I will plug it into Opus, and because Opus writes beautifully. It just writes so much better than anybody else. So for the narrative form, for prose, I can't find anything better than Opus. But what I realized what I should probably do, I should probably build my initial outline in Gemini, because like you said, it has the Google brain data. Which is just amazing. I never thought of that. And then taking that output, that outline work product, and making it pretty inside Opus. I'll try the whole thing. I'm actually going to try the whole thing in Gemini. That's why I say I want to compare the work product to the two, because I want to see how well does Gemini write versus how well does Claude write. I'd be hyper surprised to find out that Gemini wrote better, but I guess when you actually laid out the case that, hey, it owns all the content from YouTube, I mean, why shouldn't it do better? I mean, it actually should do better.
Well, in those particular cases, I think you might find that it does. And maybe it would be regarding the content, especially in that Google Business Profile. And
Yeah.
there's another reason why you should make sure you're syncing your Google Business Profile to your Bing Business Profile, but we'll save that for another time.
Okay.
The last thing that I'm going to tell people to do is that if you're running any kind of business, and I was kind of throwing this out at the beginning of the year, is that you should, depending on you seem to favor Claude. A lot of people favor ChatGPT. Whatever one that you favor, ask it based on what you know about me. What is a missed opportunity? Something that I could implement into my business
Ooh,
that could take me to the next level, or that I could cash in on, and
God,
just wait and see what answer you're going to get.
that is so cool. Man, you've definitely see. I thought a lot about it. Yeah, I haven't scratched the surface. You've definitely put a lot of cycles into this, and I think as much as well versed as I thought I was, and as well versed as I know you are, there's probably people out there who are going to see this video who aren't. They're not technical. They've never really messed with. I've got friends of mine, God love them, who are really excited to find out that they could take a photo of themselves and turn it into a black and white pencil sketch using AI. And I'm like, God, it's like using a Ferrari to go to the grocery store. You don't know what you're missing, man.
Yeah.
But for somebody out there, like if they come to you and they say, Jack, I've honestly never even messed with this stuff before. What kind of baby steps do you give them to give them an on ramp into the whole world of AI?
Well, I typically we do some of this where I just kind of like, let's see how you're using it today and what we can do to amplify and make better use of it.
Right.
Most people, if in order to see whether they want to work with me, they can go to my website directly at realdealcrew.com. There is an assessment there that can actually, it's 12 questions. It'll kind of break things down as to, and it actually gives you a report at the end. It's not just a normal assessment. It'll actually give you insightful information on where you are in the business, what you might be lacking, and what can be done about it. So it actually gives quite a bit of insightful information.
Wow, we got to make sure we put that in the show notes. Where what is the URL for that?
realdealcrew.com.
Okay.
Or you can go to the assessment directly at assessment.realdealcrew.com.
Very cool. Yeah, that's so easy. Even I can figure that out. I almost embarrassed to ask this question, not only because I've heard it a million times, but every time I ask it, I feel like I have to move the goalposts. But where's AI overhyped right now? So what are people buying or subscribing to or believing that isn't going to deliver what they think it's going to deliver? And the reason I'm embarrassed to ask that question is because, like I said, it's rather trite. But number two, it's because every time I talk to somebody who says, well, AI is never going to be able to do this, they wait 3 months and they're like, holy crap, AI just did that. So I asked that question with a little bit of a tad word of caution to myself, knowing that in 3 months this might all be for naught. But today, what are you seeing?
Well, where I think things are overhyped is that I'm getting kind of tired of hearing that it's going to replace everybody. Like I said, I think we have seen some initial thing, company layoffs and stuff, and they frankly are blaming AI. The big tech companies are saying that thanks to AI, we've seen this type of productivity increases, that we don't need the workforce. However, if you look at the numbers, it actually hasn't been the case. Most large corporations that implement AI have seen a 10 to 20% improvement in productivity, nowhere near the level that it would necessitate mass layoffs. So I actually think that's more of an economic issue, not as much of as an AI issue. But I think, again, it goes back to the everything's a nail and AI is a hammer. I don't think we're going to really see proper empathy from AI. It's not going to be able to have the depth of conversations where it's completing sales, as a skilled sales guy I guess can do.
Yeah.
The negotiation skills, frankly, isn't going to be there. I even have notes. I had a feeling, Tim, you were going to ask this. So I actually made some notes as to what I thought was where AI is overhyped. Writing offer numbers. It doesn't really have it might be able to assess, like, do some comparables and
Mm-hmm.
and some of that type of information for you, but what the true state of things is you probably don't want to let it go there. And don't expect it to close for you.
Yeah.
It's just not. So it's not a situation where you're going to be able to just set it and forget it and hope for the best. We're not running a vending machine. You've seen that test, right? Where they
Yeah.
let AI run a vending machine.
Yeah.
If you have a real estate business of any kind, it's just not going to happen anytime soon.
Yeah. The Cheetos cartel. Well, what's interesting about that is it reminds me of and I don't know how apocryphal it is, but when Reagan first started venturing through the wall into the Soviet Union, it's just Secretary of State Caspar Weinberger. Does that sound right? Anyway, whatever. It doesn't matter. His Secretary of State was on a tour in the Soviet Union, and the one of the Soviet members of Parliament they had over there was showing this filthy capitalist American pig about how amazing the infrastructure was in the Soviet Union because they swore off steam shovels and bulldozers and they actually just believed in manual labor. He's like, listen, this road project right here is employing 1,000 of our comrades. And the guy replied, he says, well, I mean, if you gave them spoons, you could employ 10,000. The point there is, I think a lot of people justify their position in life, whether it's in their career or wherever they are, if they're doing that based on an inefficiency of the system, it's going to be short lived. So if they're not providing an actual real value, they're going to be replaced by somebody who does. And I think that is where you see a lot of the AI hype. Do I believe that AI could replace all attorneys? No. You're still going to need attorneys to present facts in court. They're still going to need to make eye contact with the jury. They're still going to need to emote. I mean, some of the most successful attorneys out there have drama majors, and that's not by accident. With that said, can an AI write up a will? Yeah. Can an AI do a title search? For sure. So I think you're right that there are some very human aspects to this life. And I think that's where our moat is. Everybody likes to talk about what is their moat. And our moat against AI is, it's not that you're an inefficient human. It's not that you can bring an inefficiency to bear. It's that what you're doing is literally irreplaceable. It's providing a vacation home for a family to come spend quality time together and ignore each other and stare at their phones instead of the campfire, whatever. It's helping an elderly person get out of bed. And yes, sure, one day will there be robots for that? Probably. But I think to your point, there's always going to be something where a human is required. And I think what I'm thinking is it's been surprising to me how fast those things that I necessarily thought were perpetually in the human domain are now kind of being encroached upon by AI. And yeah, it's a really, really weird place to be in right now, watching how all this is happening.
Yeah, I find it really strange how quickly and freely we share information with these things. Like, you've probably told your AI things that you may not have ever uttered out loud to anybody else.
Yeah.
But, this is kind of maybe a weird comparison. However, you see this resurgence regarding physical media when it comes to music. There's
Vinyl.
my daughter's friends, they even buy cassettes
Yeah.
and stuff now. It's just like, it's just this oddity, but people seem to crave this the analog world that we're leaving behind. And I think that's where we're going to be. As people are using AI for everything, the people that are going to stand out is leveraging AI to augment their personal abilities. And people are going to want to work with you because you're an actual person,
Yes.
not a bot.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I was thinking of that the other day. Like everything, I find myself almost like without even knowing why attracted to nostalgia. That's what made the recent Top Gun movie so good. It was nostalgia. That's what was so good about the last Rocky and the last Rambo. He wasn't some invincible young 20-year-old guy anymore who's a war machine. He was like this old beat up grizzled dude who was just showing everybody that you could get back up again. That's why I actually like people are going to hate me for this, but did you watch Stranger Things at all?
Only the first episode or
My
so.
kids loved it, but I'm telling you, it wouldn't be that successful if it was set in 2025, 2026. It wouldn't have, but because it was set back in the late 70s, early 80s, it called to me. I was like, oh, I remember Trapper Keepers, I remember these things. And I think, I don't know, is that, can part of that bent toward nostalgia, can that finger be pointed at how fast we are evolving in technology? Maybe. It's this headlong sprint into the future, and maybe there's a part of us that's just saying, "Oh, hold on, I don't want to shut this door yet. I still remember Little House on the Prairie. I remember the Golden Girls. I remember these old things that draw me back and how wholesome and good they were. And I see some of the stuff going in the future, and it's not to say that the future is necessarily evil, but there's aspects of it that makes being an unkind and a rather shitty person. It makes it very easy to do that with this technology. And so I just hope that, whatever happens as we go forward, I hope that people do remember that there's humans in the middle of all this, whether it's a keyboard warrior telling you terrible things about yourself because they had a small disagreement with you politically or business wise, or which AI you like the best, and they just want to flame you for it. I was thinking of that the other day. I ordered these glasses, not these ones I'm wearing, of course, but they're called Halos from Brilliant Labs, and they're literally like AI infused. There's like it's sort of like the Meta glasses, and it has like a little dot matrix green monochrome display. I'm looking very forward to them. They're pretty cool, but I started thinking about like how artificial interpersonal communication is going to be when you're face to face with somebody, and I'm able to come up, like, I'm terrible at names, but so if I go to the grocery store and my little thing pops up, says, hey, there's Jamie from church. I'm like, hey, Jamie, how you doing, pal? Well, Jamie thinks I'm one hell of a guy, and he thinks, wow, Tim remembers. Well, I'm sorry, I'm embarrassed, I don't remember. Oh, don't worry about it, my name's Tim. I'm not going to tell. Like, I could foresee a future where there's almost no real communication coming from you that's not filtered through a robot. And I think that to me is one of the scariest parts of this future. Is I can't tell you how many times I've written an email, Jack, that I've run through Anthropic just to make sure. I was like, hey, am I being a dick here? Is this coming off wrong? Is there a better way to say this? And it tells me a better way to say it. Well, guess what? That person on the other end, that receiving end, they think, wow, Tim Street's a really nice guy. Well, not the real version. The real version was kind of a dick. I was just able to kind of nerf myself and present a different version of you. How dishonest is that? Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's very weird. And now what happens with both ends are doing that? Now I'm a dick, but I'm made to look nice. This person received it. They're a dick. They're made. Now it's two nice people talking to each other, but the real people never really meet. I don't know.
Yeah. I kind of have a concern about some of this because, we rely more and more on this. We don't actually have the skills ourselves to write that, and what are our kids growing up in? It goes back to another thought, like the Super Bowl just happened. And the first time my kids and we sat down and watched the Super Bowl together, the ads came on, and they asked what that they had never seen ads before,
Wow.
because during their lifetime
Everything's
we only
streaming.
had Netflix and streaming
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
stuff, never had ads. So they commercials were new to them. Then they asked, like, can we
Wow.
fast forward this? Can we skip this? No, this is a live event. You know,
Oh,
so imagine now we got kids that they're leveraging AI in all aspects, including their schoolwork. Like, are, what are we teaching them? Like, is this going to actually impact the overall education of our society?
gosh. It's so weird. I remember reading it was an ancient society, and somehow they were debating the merits of making their population literate. Should we teach these people to read and write? And at first, when I was reading about that, I assumed it was about powerful. The elite wanted to keep the masses stupid and unable to affect any change in their life. What it was, and I'm not sure it was the right point, but at least it was an intelligent point. It was the elite were actually concerned with the opposite. They thought that by writing things down, we would allow their minds to soften. By giving them the ability to um, take knowledge from here and be able to place it here and not think about it anymore. Do we, now? I would argue no on balance. I think by developing written language and being able to pass down knowledge generationally, we've actually inarguably made progress from where we started to where we are today. But it does beg the question, like, are we how much are we offloading? Like, the brain is a muscle, right? You have to work it or it's going to atrophy. So do you do you eventually become only as intelligent as your latest software update? I mean, do you eventually just become this organic battery? Like, it's like the Matrix, man. Think about it. It's like the Matrix, and we're these organic
Mhm.
batteries that exist to feed and power a machine. Like, I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that, because on one hand, I genuinely appreciate the amount of time relying on AI saves me. On the other hand, I could guarantee you it's definitely let me out of situations that I would have struggled through, and that because of that struggle, I would have come out smarter on the other hand. I know it. So it is a really weird thing. It's gosh, it's completely crazy. I don't know how to feel about it.
Yeah. Well, it's allowed me to do some things that I actually didn't think was going to be possible. It's kind of funny. Sometimes I get asked, like, what do I do for fun in my spare time? It's actually playing with the stuff even further. Like,
Yeah.
I've been using it to code now. You mentioned Claude Code. Um, I've built things that would have taken me years, if not tens of thousands of dollars, in a holiday weekend by
Wow.
myself.
Yeah.
Just like it's if you know how to do it and have a little project management skills, it's an amazing time right now.
It is, yeah, and that's kind of how I like the optimistic view. I'm an optimist. So, do I know how to hitch up a horse to a buggy? No. Well, I don't need to. I have a car that drives itself. Does that make me lesser of a person? Lesser? I don't know. Maybe not. But what I do know, and I can definitely appreciate, is there will be people who don't use this for good, but there will also be people who do this to make incredible, beautiful things that enrich their lives. And I think that's the direction that you're taking your company, and I know that's the direction I'm going to try to go to. So, as we wrap this up, I just want to, number one, say thanks, dude. I've learned so much about this. I sometimes it helps to talk with an expert on things to really find out where my knowledge gaps are. That I'm still blown away by the Gemini YouTube. I mean, I knew that. I knew freaking Gemini was oh my god. How did I not put two and two together on that? I don't know why. But I didn't. When I think about all the money I've spent on YouTube coaching, I'm embarrassed. But thank you for that. I appreciate that. And the other thing I wanted to point out was um, we didn't actually get to talk to. I don't care. These shows are pretty free flowing. We didn't even talk about real estate all that much, other than to touch on a previous. So I do want to make sure that people know how to find you, because I know for a fact there's people out there who are kind of like that one man show, who's like, they're coming through, they're worried about what do I look like? Are my business cards nice? Is my website? Instead of focusing on the actual meat and potatoes of what's going to move the needle. So if somebody's in that situation and they want to get more organized, they want to figure out how to actually have systems that work regardless of where they are in life. Would you kind of give people a rundown on that, Jack, and how to get a hold of you?
Yeah, well, everything you can find everything, including the podcasts and YouTube channels at realdealcrew.com. Everything's consolidated there. You can take that assessment or even book it's called a fit call. However, I'm going to warn people. Tim, you mentioned you use and Claude to make sure you're being nice. I have a tendency of being a bit blunt on phone calls. So if you're ready to hear my opinion and you can handle a little constructive feedback, you're welcome to book a call there.
Well, it's much kinder in the long run to disappoint people with the truth than to comfort them with a lie, right? So yeah. I think ultimately you're doing the right thing.
Yeah, I've learned a long time ago, any of these things is kind of a partnership, right?
Yeah.
And you either start with an awkward conversation or it will end with one.
Ooh, I like that. That's a good one. I'm going to have to add that to my bucket of aphorisms. That's a great one. I love that. All right. It actually sounds like a lot of my dating life before I met my wife. Anyway, Jack, it was so awesome having you on. I can't tell you what it was a pleasure to be on. What a pleasure it was to be on your show. Thank you for coming on mine. Thank you for teaching everybody everything you did today. This is just so awesome. Great tips and knowledge. Go take that assessment. Folks, if you're in this space and if you don't want Jack to make you cry, go take the assessment and get that version first. And then maybe you'll be prepared for the truth when the time comes.
Yeah. I've yet to make anybody cry. No crying. There's been a couple times on the podcast I've gotten a little deep on some of those things.
Hey, you know what? Like you said, awkward discussion at the beginning or the end. It's going to happen. There's going to be some awkwardness there. All right, brother. Well, folks, thank you again for watching. This is Tim Street signing off with Jack Haas. And once again, if you need any help selling on your own, you've got my contact info. We're going to put all of Jack's contact info in his website in the show notes. So go give that a look. And until next week, I think, next week. Yeah, I think we're doing a show next week. Oh, wait, you know what? Next week, I'm going to UNF to visit my daughter at college for Parents Weekend. So I will be skipping next week. I don't know how you just cry yourselves to sleep tonight, I guess, folks. I don't know how you get over it. I'm sure you'll figure out a way. But anyway, Jack, thank you, sir. I appreciate it. All right, folks.
Appreciate it. Have a good.
Thanks for listening to the Foolproof FSBO podcast. For free tools and step-by-step guides to sell your home with confidence, head on over to foolprooffsbo.com/podcast. That's foolprooffsbo.com/podcast. And we'll see you next week.